When you first turn it on, obviously you have a bunch of different options. Really, all we're really going to deal with there is the home. So you can either select it right there, or there is a home button. It's right under that yellow diamond. Now, yours may have a bunch of stuff already there. If you're like me, you don't like to look at all of that. So if you ever want to clear that out, if you hit the F1 button, it's your tools. F1's up there at the top where y equals usually is. And if you look at the bottom of that list, well, let's just kind of go down the list. You can cut and copy things like you can on a computer and paste them. I'll show you that feature here in a little bit. But option number 8, clear home, will clear all of that stuff that's right there on the screen to start with. Okay. Is one that you need to be aware of. Okay, one of the things that you may have to do, your square root is about in the same place where it normally is, second and the multiplication sign, okay? That's your square root. So that's the square root. Okay, but what if you have to take a cube root or a higher root or something like that? So to do that, if you just press clear, that'll clear what's on that line where you're inputting things. To do a root other than the square root, what you're going to do is you're going to do diamond and the number 9, and the word root will pop up. Okay, diamond and the number 9, the word root will come up. So say I want to find the cube root of 27. Number 1, hopefully you know what the cube root of 27 is, but I'm just using a simple example here. Okay, 27, you put the number you're taking the root of and the root that you want to take. So if I want to take the cube root, I'm going to do comma 3. Okay, and then close the parentheses. You have to close the parentheses on this one. It does not like it if you do not close the parentheses. So close the parentheses and press enter, and it will give you the answer of 3. Now, here's what I was telling you a little bit about the other day. This has what we call pretty print. Okay, so if you look back up, after you press enter, it puts it in that cube root form. You should see a cube root of 27. Now, you could also, if you're ever needing to find a cube root or a fifth root, you can also put it in exponential form. Remember we did this in pre-calculus, so say we want to find the cube root of 27. That's the same thing as 27 to the 1/3. Just keep that in mind. That is the same process. It doesn't put it back in cube root form because you were doing it in exponential form. But that's another way if you forget how to do the root. You can always put it in exponential form of the root. So let's see here. If it's not a nice whole number, let's say that we're wanting to find the cube root of 8. Okay, so diamond 9, 8, comma 3. Wait, nope, that one works. Never mind. The cube root of 27. No, we just did 27. No. 8. It's messed up. I'm just taking all the other ones, the batteries are dead. Where did I put my batteries?
You can take the batteries out that one, but
Oh. Oh, okay. So, cube root of 18. 18 is not a perfect cube. So when I press enter, it gives me this answer in this different form. It gives me 3 to the 2/3 and 2 to the 1/3. But that's probably not how my answer is going to show up. So anytime you want a decimal approximation of something, if it gives you an answer in this exact form, but you need the decimal, after you press enter, then you can press diamond and enter, and it will give you the decimal approximation of that answer, okay? So anytime you type something in and it gives it to you in exact form, but the problem requires the decimal form, you need to press diamond and then press enter, and it'll give you the decimal approximation. I will continue emphasizing this, but always, always, always on the AP exam, you use 3 digits after the decimal. Okay, always 3 digits after the decimal. And they do this really cool thing where you don't have to worry about rounding. Okay, you can round. So if this was the problem and we were having to give our answer as 2.62, they would accept 0.620, and they would also accept 0.621. You can round, which would make it 0.621, or you can do what they call truncate, and you just write the first 3 digits after the decimal. I encourage you to truncate, because then you just write the first 3 digits and you stop. You don't have to worry about rounding or anything in that case. Okay? Now, another really powerful thing that your calculator will do. They may ask you on the calculator active portions of the exam to solve some equations that are kind of tricky to solve or really not possible to solve without a calculator. So let me show you how we can do that. If you look at the top, we've already looked at F1. If you hit F2, that's your algebra menu. Under the algebra menu, you've got the first option there is to solve. There's factor, you can expand, you can find zeros. We'll look at that here in a minute. So let's just do the solve. Simple equation. We're trying to solve the equation squared minus 2x is equal to 8. Okay. The square button. Okay, so you don't have a square button like you do on your 83 or 84, so you just have to use the exponent button, which is right below clear. X squared minus 2x is equal to 8. Okay. The equal button is over there on the left side, about halfway down. Now, here's the thing. Anytime you tell your calculator solve something, when we get to the point where we're taking derivatives and integrals, you always have to tell it what the variable is. Even though you only used x, you still have to tell it that x is the variable. So here's why your calculator has commas. You've got to press comma and x before you close your parentheses. Okay, so you've got solve x squared minus 2x is equal to 8, comma x, close your parentheses, and then when you press enter, it'll give you the answer, -2 or +4. Now, I just picked a simple example. Probably when this would come into play is when it's a more involved kind of equation. So, if things start to get complicated, like they love to use e and trig functions and things like that, and when you try and solve with some of those, the calculator gets kind of bogged down because it tries to figure out the exact answer, but all the exam really wants is a decimal approximation. So really the better way to solve in that case would be to graph it and find the zero. Okay, the better way to solve it would be to graph it and find the zero. Or, speaking of finding zeros, I mentioned there under the algebra menu that number 4 there says zeros. So I can find the zeros of, I'm just going to make up a random one, x cubed plus 5x squared minus 6. Now I still have to say comma x. I always have to tell it what my variable is. So I'm trying to find the zeros of the polynomial x cubed plus 5x minus 6. So I put that in, comma X, close my parentheses, press enter, and notice it gives me 3 zeros here. I've got negative square root of 3 plus 3, the square root of 3 minus 3, and positive 1. Now again, if you want those in decimal form, you press diamond enter, it'll do it again, and this time it gives me the decimal values for those answers. Okay, so it'll give you exact answers. If you want the decimals, you got to do diamond and press enter. So that's a little bit quicker than having to graph that function, do your zero thing, or have to do the left bound, right bound, and all that stuff. It'll spit all of them out for you right there. Okay, so that's a pretty powerful thing. All right, graphing, pretty much the exact same thing as your other calculator, except all of your options, they're not these buttons. You have to press the diamond, okay? Notice everything's color coordinated. Above every button almost, there's a blue character, and there's either a yellow or a white character. So if it's yellow, you have to press the diamond before you press that button to get there, okay? So if I want to go to my y equals, what? The alpha, that selects the white letters that are over some of those buttons. Okay, so if I want to go to my y equals, I press diamond F1. I've already typed into mine, but it's the exact same thing. But the cool thing is, here I've got a rational expression in this y2. I know it's kind of hard for y'all to see there, but I've got a rational expression right here. After I press enter, it will make it look like it should look on your paper as long as you got your parentheses in the right place. So that's a good check anytime you're typing in kind of a complex equation. I always look at what the calculator prints before I look at the answer to make sure that that was actually what I intended to type in. No, you do not have to do the comma X. The comma X is just when you're asking the calculator to solve or find a feature like that. No, you just type this in like normal. Good question. Your window, if you need to adjust the window, just diamond F2. That allows you to change your window. So while we're talking about that, let me bring this idea up. Sometimes they will ask you to solve an equation, but they just ask for the solutions within a certain interval. Okay, so let's say that asking me about this function right here, this very complex or rational function with a trig function in the numerator, but they only want the solutions between, let's say, 0 and 4. So instead of graphing the entire function, I'm going to change my window. I'm going to change my window so that it's between 0 and 4 there. You can change the scale if you want to. You really don't have to. And I zoomed in on the y values as well. I changed it from -5 to 5. And then I can go to my graph. And I'm not worried about all these other things that the function can do. I'm just worried about where it crosses the x-axis within this window. And I see it might cross right there, but it definitely crosses over here. So then I can just focus in on what's really important. I don't want to look at all my possible solutions. I only want my solutions on that interval. So I encourage you, if they're asking you for solutions on the interval, graph the function, change your window so that you're only looking at that interval, and then you can find your zeros. So to find your zeros on the graph, F5 is math, and you've got all the regular options that you have on the 83 and 84. Value, 0, minimum, maximum, intersection, and then it's got some other stuff that we'll talk about later. But if I want to find the 0, that's option number 2. It still wants, they call it a lower bound, so that's still to the left. An upper bound, that's still to the right of where it crosses. That's all you have to do. You don't have to do the guess or anything like that. And notice it gives me my 0 right here, 2.802. Remember, this one still does this sometimes. We're expecting that number to be 0 right there, but it gives me this weird, remember that is scientific notation. It's sitting right there on the x-axis. You have the right value. It's just approximated it, so it's not at exactly 0, but times 10 to the negative 13, that's practically 0. All right, trig, okay, trig. You do have your trig buttons on here. At any point in time, you can just hit the home button. It'll take you back to this screen right here. Your trig buttons are on here, but they are not their own dedicated button like they are on the 83 and 84. Sine, cosine, and tangent, you're going to have to press second to activate those trig functions there. So we want the sine of pi over 6. Now your pi button is second and the button under clear. Okay, it'll give me 1/2. Here's the nice thing. Say I want the cosine of pi over 6. Remember, the cosine of pi over 6 is the square root of 2. On the 83 and 84, that used to give us the decimal value. But here, it gives you the exact value of the cosine of pi over 6. But again, if you needed the decimal, diamond enter, it gives you the decimal value. Yes, ma'am. Okay, good question. If you mess up typing something, you don't want to clear out the whole thing. The button right beside clear, that backwards arrow, is your backspace button. Okay, that is your backspace button, so you can delete it one time. Here's the other good thing. This one won't override it. Okay, so say I'm typing in a polynomial equation here, and I forget that I was supposed to have 4x right there between 6x squared and 6. I can just move my cursor over there and just start typing in my plus 4x, and it doesn't delete what comes after it like the other calculator does. Okay, it shows. Figures does, then you just have to press the second and that backspace button. See the I and S, it's like the insert button on your computer. That will prevent it from overriding it. Okay, still on the trig thing. It's got sine, cosine, and tangent. It also has the inverses, okay, the inverse functions and those buttons. On the 83 and 84, if we ever had to do cosecant or secant or something like that, remember we had to do 1 over sine, 1 over cosine. We had to remember which one it matched with. Now, you don't have secant and cosecant buttons on here, but what you can do is you can spell it out. Okay, so say we want cosecant of pi over 4. So we're going to do alpha, and our C is right there above the parenthesis. Alpha 3 for the S, alpha C. So there's the CSC for cosecant. And then just parentheses, pi over 4, and it'll give us the cosecant of pi over 4. So if it ever involves cosecant, secant, or cotangent, you just have to spell out those words. I haven't found them anywhere, but I think that's what you need. Now, say that I needed to use this decimal value right up here. Instead of having to type it back in, you can use your arrow to arrow up to that value. And remember how I told you you could copy and paste? I can do F1, copy, and I go back down here where I was typing something in, say for whatever reason I wanted to find the cosecant of that value. I just put my cursor where I want to paste that in, and F1 paste, and it pastes in that whole exact decimal value. And I press enter. Obviously that one's not going to be a nice neat one because that was a value of a trig function, not an a. So that's another cool feature. If you need to use an answer, never round in the middle of the problem. Okay, never round in the middle of the problem. So try and use something exact or use the copy paste feature here on your calculator. All right, last thing I want to show you where it's at. If you need to do the absolute value, okay, the absolute value, you do still have your math menu. It's just in a different place. It's above the 5, and it's in blue. So you're going to do second 5. And look, it looks a little bit different, but it's still kind of the same menu. Remember when you do the math on the other one, you go over to num. Well, num stands for number. So see that little arrow? So that means press your right arrow, and then you get this next menu, and your ABS is there as well. Unfortunately, it is not, and I know this is kind of tricky. It looks like you have an absolute value bar there beside the 7. It's not actually an absolute value bar. Okay? That is not a value bar. It's used in some other things, but it's not an absolute value. You have to go through your math menu to find that. Or you could also go catalog, and it's the very first option under your catalog. Your catalog is right there beside your backspace button. It's the very first option in the catalog. So that gets you a little bit, it gets you there quicker. But just like on the 83 and 84, the catalog has every function that is in this calculator. You can jump just like you can on the other ones. So say you need, I don't know, say you need something in the M's. Okay, if you press the 5 button, that's going to jump you down to the M's, so you don't have to scroll all the way down through that list. So if you're ever looking for something, so I don't know, let's see if I'll make cosecant on here, but I'm just curious. Oh, well, there was cotangent. There it is. Okay, if you didn't want to type in the cosecant, you can go to your catalog, go down to the C's, and there's your cosecant, and your cotangent is right up there. You could jump to the S's and find your secant if you didn't want to have to type it all in there. I would assume it's somewhere. So you have to. I don't think you have to hit alpha. I think you just press the. Yeah, you just press the button that has that letter above it. You don't have to press alpha. So if you want to jump down to the S's, you hit 3, and it jumps you down to the S's, and there's your secant. Or you can just type it out. Either one works. Okay? All right, I think those were the main things that I wanted to go over.